told it because it ended up the guy was a homicide cop and he threatened to have my wife and kids killed, and I was getting a little nervous. So I just took this thing and turned it for, I got a couple $100,000.
Darrell Sheets was one of the most confident buyers on the hit show Storage Wars. He was a man who walked into storage auctions with big energy and often walked out with shocking finds. But behind the cameras, a different story slowly began to surface about his life. What exactly did they just uncover about Darrell Sheets that has everyone talking? Let's find out. The rise of the gambler. Darrell Sheets built his reputation in a strange business where people made money from the forgotten belongings of strangers. On the television show Storage Wars, he appeared loud, confident, and fearless. Other buyers called him the gambler because he often risked thousands of dollars on lockers that nobody else wanted. Sometimes he won big, sometimes he lost, but the camera loved him. His booming voice, sharp instincts, and wild reactions turned him into one of the most recognizable faces on the show. Like many young people trying to find their direction, he experimented with different types of work. At one point, he worked in landscaping but struggled to keep the job. After getting fired, he went back to his boss asking for another chance. Instead, the man, Don Anthony, introduced him to storage auctions.
I wasn't doing a good job, and the guy fired me. And I went back to him and said, hey, I need my job. And he said, well, I'm going to show you something else, and you'll make money for the rest of your life.
Darrell bought his first locker, tripled his money, and knew he had found his calling. From that moment, he never looked back, forever grateful for that guidance. The world of storage auctions fascinated him from the moment he entered it. Before the fame arrived, Darrell had already spent decades working inside the storage auction world. He learned the business long before television producers ever pointed a camera at him. For years, he drove across California, standing in storage yards while auctioneers opened doors to abandoned lockers. Some units there held rare treasures. Over time, he developed a reputation for spotting value where others saw trash. That skill helped him survive in a business where a single mistake could wipe out months of profit. When Storage Wars first aired in 2010, the series quickly exploded in popularity. The idea was simple. If someone stopped paying rent on a storage unit for several months, the facility could legally auction the contents to recover the debt. Buyers had only a few seconds to look inside before bidding began. They were not allowed to touch anything. They had to guess the value based on what they could see from the doorway. That moment of risk created the excitement that drew millions of viewers. Fortunately, Darrell thrived in that environment. Cameras often captured him shouting bids across crowded auction yards. He trusted his instincts. Most times he paid thousands of dollars for lockers packed with furniture, boxes, or mysterious containers. The gamble occasionally paid off in spectacular ways. Over the years, he claimed to have discovered valuable collectibles, rare artwork, and one of the most valuable comic book collections ever found in a storage unit. But the television version of the business showed just the excitement. It rarely showed the emotional side of the work. Every locker once belonged to someone. Behind every pile of furniture or box of clothes was a story about a life that had fallen apart. Some renters had lost jobs. Some had moved away suddenly, while others had passed away and left their belongings behind. Buyers like Darrell often opened boxes filled with family photos, letters, or personal memories that had been abandoned. Those moments created a strange feeling that viewers never fully saw on television. While the show focused on the hunt for treasure, the reality inside many lockers felt heavy. Buyers sometimes discovered objects that revealed the struggles of strangers. Old documents, diaries, or personal items told stories about people who could no longer pay the rent on their storage units. Even other cast members later admitted that some discoveries inside lockers were deeply emotional and difficult to see. As the show grew more famous, the pressure around the cast also grew. Filming schedules became longer. Auctions attracted huge crowds of fans. Darrell leaned into the role and became more competitive on screen. However, fame did not change the risky nature of the business. Every locker still required money up front. A buyer could spend thousands of dollars and walk away with nothing. Darrell often spoke openly about those risks. Winning one valuable locker could make up for several losing ones, yet there's the pressure of constantly gambling money. Over time, fans began to notice something unusual. Darrell started appearing less often on the show. At first, people assumed he was simply taking a break from filming. Reality television schedules can change quickly, and cast members sometimes disappear for a season before returning again. But rumors slowly began spreading online, leading some viewers to wonder if something serious had happened behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Darrell himself was beginning to slow down. Years of constant travel, auctions, and filming had taken a toll. The business that once felt exciting now required more energy than before. Storage auctions often started early in the morning and continued all day as buyers drove between facilities. For someone who had already spent decades in the industry, the routine could become exhausting. Eventually, Darrell stepped away from the show for a period of time. While the series continued filming new seasons, his appearances became less frequent. The change marked the end of an era for many viewers who had watched him since the early days. The gambler had been one of the faces that defined the show's identity. Yet behind that change, another story was already unfolding. Something far more serious than television schedules or business decisions had begun developing in Darrell's life. And when the truth finally came out, fans realized that his sudden disappearance from the spotlight had a much darker explanation. The terrifying health crisis. For years, Darrell Sheets looked like the strongest man in the storage auction business. On television, he shouted bids, hauled heavy furniture out of lockers, and celebrated huge discoveries with wild excitement. Viewers saw a man who seemed almost unstoppable. But in early 2019, something inside his body began going terribly wrong. At first, the warning signs were small. Darrell started feeling tired more often than usual. He had spent decades working long days, so fatigue did not seem unusual. Feeling exhausted sometimes felt like a normal part of the job, but the tiredness did not go away. Weeks passed and Darrell continued feeling weak. His body felt heavier than usual, and breathing sometimes became more difficult. Even his friends noticed that he seemed less energetic than before. For nearly 3 months, those symptoms continued building quietly. Darrell later explained that he had been very sick during that time but had not realized how serious the situation had become. Like many people, he assumed the illness would eventually pass. Instead, his condition kept getting worse. Then, one night, everything changed. Darrell attended a concert expecting a normal evening of music and entertainment. Instead, he suddenly began feeling intense pain in his chest. Before he knew what was going on, the discomfort quickly spread through his body. Breathing became difficult. The warning signs were unmistakable. Something was very wrong. Doctors later confirmed the terrifying truth. Darrell had suffered a heart attack. The reality shocked both the television star and his fans. For years he had appeared larger than life, but now he was lying in a hospital bed surrounded by machines and doctors. Medical tests soon revealed even worse news. The heart attack was only part of the problem. Doctors discovered that Darrell had congestive heart failure, a serious condition where the heart struggles to pump blood properly through the body. It did stop there. They also found a severe problem affecting his lungs. The situation was dangerous. One of the arteries connected to his heart had become almost completely blocked. In later updates, Darrell explained that the blockage was about 95%. Doctors sometimes call this type of blockage the widowmaker, because it can lead to sudden death if it is not treated quickly. At that point, Darrell required immediate medical treatment, so surgeons performed procedures to open the blocked artery and restore blood flow to his heart. Doctors inserted stents to keep the artery open and prevent another life-threatening blockage. The surgery helped stabilize his condition, but recovery would take time. From his hospital bed, Darrell shared updates with fans through social media. The messages revealed how serious the situation had become. He admitted that he had been sick for months before the heart attack happened. That long period without treatment allowed the condition to grow worse inside his body. Fans flooded his pages with messages of support and prayers. Seeing him in a hospital bed created a feeling of sympathy towards the TV star. Despite the danger, Darrell's personality remained strong. Even during recovery, he tried to keep a positive attitude. He thanked fans for their support and spoke openly about his determination to survive the crisis. His fiancée at the time stayed by his side throughout the hospital stay, helping him through the frightening days after surgery. Recovery from heart failure is not quick. After the surgery, Darrell's doctors continued monitoring his heart carefully. At one point, he wore a defibrillator vest designed to detect dangerous heart rhythms and deliver life-saving shocks if needed. Gradually, his heart function began improving, though it remained weaker than normal. Doctors eventually reported that his heart strength had improved to around 40% of normal function. That improvement brought a sense of relief, but the recovery journey was far from over. The experience forced Darrell to confront something he had ignored for years. His lifestyle had placed heavy strain on his body. During his time on television, he had struggled with weight issues and unhealthy eating habits. At one point, he decided to change his diet and lost more than 100 pounds through a structured nutrition program. Even with that weight loss, the years of stress and unhealthy habits had already left their mark. The heart attack became a brutal wake-up call. For the first time, Darrell had to slow down and focus on survival rather than business. Fans who followed his updates watched the recovery closely. Every message from the hospital carried the same question. Would the legendary gambler return to the life he once lived, or had the crisis changed everything forever? The dark side of storage units. The world of storage auctions looks exciting from the outside. Cameras show buyers cheering after they find rare collectibles, vintage furniture, or valuable artwork. But the reality inside abandoned lockers can sometimes feel much darker. Buyers open metal doors hoping to find treasure, yet many units contain objects that leave them uncomfortable or even frightened. Over the years, Darrell Sheets experienced several discoveries that revealed the strange and unsettling side of the business. Every storage locker begins the same way. The metal door slides open, and buyers get only a few seconds to look inside. They cannot walk into the unit or touch anything before bidding. All they can do is stare from the doorway and try to guess what might be hidden in the piles of boxes, bags, and furniture. That moment of uncertainty creates the gamble that attracts professional buyers like Darrell. Sometimes the gamble leads to huge rewards, but other times the door opens to something completely unexpected. One example happened during an auction where Darrell purchased a locker that seemed ordinary at first. The unit looked messy but promising. Boxes were stacked against the wall, and a few containers sat near the entrance. Darrell placed a bid of about $500 and won the locker. Like most buyers, he expected to find items that could be sold later at flea markets or antique shops. But when he started digging through the boxes, the situation quickly turned strange. Inside the containers were animal skeletons and bones. Some were small, while others were larger and more detailed. The discovery surprised Darrell and the people watching him sort through the unit. At first, he believed the bones might belong to collector's items that could be sold to museums or hobbyists. That would make good sales. So, to find out the value, Darrell brought the bones to a specialist at a natural history store called the Bone Room. The expert carefully examined the items and identified the remains of several animals, including a bat, a bird, a squirrel, and a snake. However, the news that followed shocked Darrell. The expert explained that the bones were likely from animals collected as roadkill and were illegal to sell. Instead of turning the discovery into profit, Darrell realized the strange collection had no legal market. The gamble that looked promising from the onset suddenly became worthless. That kind of surprise is common in the storage auction world. Buyers often open boxes expecting antiques or collectibles, but instead find objects that raise uncomfortable questions about the previous owner. During another locker purchase, Darrell opened containers and realized the unit was not just storing items, it contained living animals. It had been used as a breeding space for exotic snakes. Inside the boxes were albino Burmese pythons kept in clear containers. The snakes had been raised for the exotic pet trade before the locker was abandoned. Finding valuable objects inside lockers is exciting, but discovering live animals is a completely different experience. Buyers must suddenly figure out how to handle creatures that can be dangerous if mishandled. Situations like that remind auction buyers that storage units can hide almost anything behind their metal doors. Yet one of Darrell's most disturbing experiences happened long before television cameras followed his life. Years earlier, while working in the storage auction business in California, Darrell opened a unit that contained something far more shocking than bones or animals. Inside the locker was a human corpse wrapped in plastic. Darrell immediately contacted the police after realizing what he had found. Investigators later determined that the body belonged to a woman who had been unalived by her husband. He had then hidden the body inside the storage unit in an attempt to conceal the crime. Police confiscated the contents of the locker as evidence during the investigation. For Darrell, the discovery became one of the most disturbing moments of his career. The storage auction business often involves strange surprises, but finding a human body crosses into something far darker. The moment revealed how easily a simple auction locker could become part of a criminal investigation. Stories like that circulate fast among storage buyers. Many people in the business have encountered items that suggest illegal activity or personal tragedies. Some lockers contain personal belongings that hint at lives that ended suddenly. Others reveal collections that seem almost disturbing in their nature. Even experienced buyers sometimes feel uneasy when opening certain boxes. The television version of storage auctions rarely focuses on these darker moments. Most episodes highlight exciting discoveries that bring profit. Viewers see buyers laughing, celebrating, and negotiating with appraisers. But behind those scenes, the real business often feels unpredictable. Darrell himself once explained that unusual items appear in storage lockers far more often than viewers might expect. In fact, some buyers claim that adult material shows up in many units they purchase. Storage lockers hold the private belongings of strangers, and not every item inside them was meant to be seen by the public. That reality can make the job uncomfortable at times. Buyers must sort through boxes filled with personal objects that once belonged to someone else's life. Despite those moments, professional buyers continue returning to auctions again and again. The chance of discovering something valuable keeps them coming back. A single profitable locker can make up for many disappointing ones. But Darrell's experiences proved that storage auctions are not always about money. But one thing is sure: it brings back the forgotten pieces of someone else's past. Behind the fame, personal struggles and changes. Away from the cameras, Darrell's personal life moved through several difficult changes. Long before television fame arrived, Darrell had already built a complicated family life. He was once married and had 2 children, including his son Brandon, who later appeared alongside him on the show. The marriage eventually ended in divorce, leaving Darrell to rebuild his life while continuing to work in the demanding world of storage auctions. Divorce can change a person's routine in ways that are not always visible from the outside. For Darrell, the separation meant adjusting to life as a single father while still managing a business that required constant travel and unpredictable income. Storage auctions rarely follow a stable schedule. Some days bring huge profits, while others bring nothing but wasted time and money. Despite those challenges, Darrell remained deeply connected to his family. His son Brandon grew up watching what his father did closely. From an early age, Brandon saw him purchasing storage units, sorting through the contents, and negotiating sales with customers. Over time, the young boy became interested in the business himself. He eventually joined him in the storage auction business, learning the trade directly from his father. As time went on, Brandon started helping his father at auctions and resale events, learning how to identify valuable items and negotiate prices. Together they appeared on television as a father and son team, working side by side while competing against other buyers. Working with family can strengthen relationships, but it can also create pressure. The storage auction world requires quick decisions, aggressive bidding, and the willingness to risk large amounts of money in seconds. Those moments of stress sometimes tested the patience of buyers, especially when television cameras captured every reaction. Outside the show, Darrell also tried to build new relationships. One of the most unusual stories in his personal life involved how he met real estate agent Kimber Werfel. The meeting happened in a completely unexpected way. Both of them were driving on a highway in California when they noticed each other in separate lanes. Instead of letting the moment pass, Darrell decided to take a chance. He followed her car long enough to write his phone number on a piece of paper and hold it against the window so she could see it. The bold move worked. Kimber eventually called him, and the two began dating soon afterward. Their relationship became very serious. They blended their families and spent time raising their children together. Darrell already had 2 children, and Kimber also had children from a previous relationship. Together, They created a larger household that included several kids and eventually grandchildren. For a while, the relationship appeared stable. The couple even became engaged, and their life together seemed to move toward a long-term future. However, relationships can change unexpectedly, especially when fame enters the picture. As Storage Wars became more popular, the cast members suddenly found themselves living very public lives. Social media followers, interviews, and constant attention created new pressures around their personal relationships. Eventually, the relationship between Darrell and Kimber came to an end. The couple separated in 2016 after several years together. Breakups often leave emotional scars, especially when families have already blended their lives together. For Darrell, the separation marked another major turning point in his personal story. After the relationship ended, he moved forward with new plans and even announced another engagement later that same year. The woman he became engaged to was Romney Snyder, who worked with a horse rescue organization. The announcement surprised many fans because it came soon after the breakup with Kimber. Some observers even speculated that the new relationship may have started before the previous one had completely ended. However, that engagement did not last forever either. Over time, the relationship faded, and Darrell eventually moved on again. In later years, he was linked to another partner named Patty Rich, whom he met after moving to Lake Havasu City in Arizona. These changes in relationships showed a very different side of Darrell's life compared to the confident personality viewers saw on television. Behind the bids and celebrations at auctions, he was navigating emotional challenges. At the same time, Darrell was also dealing with physical changes in his body. Years of unhealthy eating habits and a demanding work schedule had affected his health. During his time on television, he reached a point where he realized something needed to change. He decided to start a weight loss journey and dramatically changed his eating habits. With the help of a structured nutrition program, he lost more than 100 pounds. The transformation surprised many fans who had watched him on the show for years. Losing that much weight required discipline and patience. It meant replacing old habits with healthier ones and learning how to maintain a completely different lifestyle. Darrell himself admitted that his body had been suffering before the change. His joints hurt, and he felt constantly tired before improving his diet and routines. Weight loss can improve a person's health, but it does not automatically solve every challenge in life. Despite the ups and downs, Darrell continued sharing parts of his life with fans through social media. Interestingly, even after their breakup, he occasionally posted affectionate messages toward Kimber, the former partner he had separated from years earlier. Observers noticed that the two seemed to maintain a friendly connection despite their complicated history. For those who had watched his life unfold across many seasons of television, these moments revealed a more human side of the man known as the Gambler. But the real person behind that nickname faced relationship struggles, family changes, and personal challenges that rarely appeared on screen. Through each of those changes, Darrell continued moving forward, adjusting his life one chapter at a time, while the public watched pieces of the story unfold from a distance. And even now, his story is quite different. Life after the spotlight. After decades of chasing storage lockers across California, Darrell Sheets eventually reached a point where life had to slow down. The man once known for shouting bids across crowded auction yards began stepping away from the intense routine that had defined most of his career. His absence from regular appearances on Storage Wars left many fans wondering what had really happened to the famous buyer. For many years, Darrell had been one of the most recognizable figures on the show. His loud personality and fearless bidding style made him stand out among the other buyers. He often took risks that others refused to take. While some buyers preferred careful bidding strategies, Darrell often pushed the price higher in hopes of hitting a massive payoff. That attitude earned him both admiration and criticism from other bidders. Eventually, though, the fast pace of the business began to change. Darrell slowly started stepping away from full-time appearances on the show. He officially retired after season 12, although he later returned briefly when the show resumed production and appeared again in seasons 13 through 15. Even after those returns, his presence became less frequent. New buyers appeared, and the focus of the show began shifting toward different personalities. Fans who had followed Darrell since the earliest seasons started asking the same question online. Where was the man who once dominated the auctions? Instead of racing between storage facilities, Darrell had begun building a quieter life in a different place. After recovering from his serious health problems, he relocated to Lake Havasu City, a desert town on the border between Arizona and California. The location offered a slower pace compared to the crowded auction yards of Southern California, where he had spent most of his career. In Lake Havasu, Darrell started a new business that allowed him to stay connected to the treasure-hunting lifestyle without the constant pressure of auctions. In 2023, he opened a shop called Show Me Your Junk. The store became a place where Darrell could sell collectibles, antiques, and unusual items gathered from estate sales, garage sales, and other sources. Instead of guessing the value of an entire locker in a few seconds, he could now take his time choosing items and negotiating prices with customers. Inside the shop, visitors often find a mix of strange and interesting objects. Vintage furniture sits beside rare collectibles. Old tools share shelf space with antiques that once belonged to other families. The environment reflects the same type of treasure-hunting world that made Darrell famous, but without the intense competition of auctions. Running the shop also allows Darrell to interact directly with people who watched him on television. Fans sometimes travel long distances to visit the store and meet him in person. Many arrive with stories about episodes they remember watching years earlier. Others bring items they hope he might buy or evaluate. Even though the television cameras are mostly gone, the connection with fans remains strong. Darrell often shares updates about his business and daily life through social media posts. These updates show him attending local events, selling unusual items, or simply enjoying the slower rhythm of his new environment. The intense lifestyle that once fueled his career has gradually been replaced with a more relaxed routine. Another major change in his life involves his priorities. During the years of television fame, Darrell spent much of his time chasing the next big discovery. The thrill of winning a locker and uncovering valuable items became part of his identity. But after the health scare that nearly ended his life, his focus began shifting toward different goals. Friends and observers have noted that Darrell now appears more interested in family and personal time than in chasing massive auction profits. His financial situation also reflects the success of his earlier years. Through decades of storage auctions, television appearances, and business ventures, Darrell built an estimated net worth of millions of dollars. Much of that money came from buying abandoned lockers, reselling valuable finds, and appearing on the reality series that made him famous. Those years of success allow him to maintain a comfortable lifestyle while focusing on smaller business projects. Occasionally, fans still ask whether Darrell will return to Storage Wars again in the future. Reality television often brings former cast members back for special appearances or reunion episodes. Darrell himself has indicated in the past that he would not completely rule out returning if the right opportunity appeared. For now, though, his daily life looks very different from the scenes viewers remember from television. Instead of standing in crowded storage yards surrounded by rival bidders, he spends much of his time browsing estate sales, meeting customers, and searching for unusual objects that might interest collectors. The gamble still exists, but it happens on a much smaller and more controlled scale. His nickname still follows him wherever he goes. But the man behind that now lives a quieter life, surrounded by the same type of forgotten objects that once filled abandoned lockers. What do you like about Darrell Sheets, and which of the episodes he featured in is your favorite? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.